1 2, check 1 2. 1 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2. This is Adrian JB Homer, and you are now tuned in to the FatherHood Podcast. I'm an entertainer, a businessman. I'm a father of 7 children, and I had my first kid when I was 17 years old. So I've been doing this for a while now. My youngest child is 9 years old, turning 10 this year, and my eldest son is 30, turning 31. It's crazy to think about the journey that I've taken along this way to fatherhood, and thinking where I started and where I'm at now is totally two different places. And, I was supposed to get this started a while ago, and just whatever, not insecurities, but just worries of how it's going to look, how it's going to sound. And, my eldest son said, "Pops, just do it. Don't even try too hard. Don't think too hard." Most people are just on their phone streaming right off of the live. Ain't nothing special to it. And I guess the more authentic and the more genuine we can make it, the more relatable it is to other people out there that's listening. And yeah, so for all those who don't know me, I'm known by JB across the world as an entertainer, hip hop artist. I've done many things in my life. And, I grew up in the streets of Flemington Park from a child. And I remember my first memory walking outside and seeing one of my big bros now, KB, rapping on the corner. And I remember it changed my life because I didn't know. Like, I remember seeing this on TV prior, and then walking outside and seeing somebody do it in real life right there changed me forever. I came up in a time where most of the people, or the black people, were West Indian descent or African, coming into Canada or Toronto, where I'm based. And it was a different upbringing back then, I'll say. And I'm just kind of getting into it, and we'll get into the main topic, shortly. Just doing the introduction again for y'all. And again, just warming up and getting into the groove. We got a lot of episodes. We got everything planned, laid out, and we got a lot of great topics to touch on. And along the way, we'll, meet new people, and we'll have great resources for all those that's out there that's looking for assistance, help, that doesn't know what to do, may be caught in certain situations. And like a lot of us, sometimes things blindside you, and all of a sudden you're in a whole new world, and you just got to figure it out. And for most of us, we didn't have the help or the assistance or the people around us to be able to help guide us the proper way. Because if you're like me, my parents were children when they had me. They're 17, 18 years old, still teenagers. And then we go and repeat the cycle, So when I had my first son, I was 17 years old, a child being raised by child parents, not knowing how to properly raise me, And because I was the eldest of, on my mother's side, the eldest of 5. On my father's side, the eldest of, same thing, 5. And it seems like the first kid for young parents is almost like the test child. And it's like an experiment. Let's see what works, what doesn't. Let's see if whatever we were raised on or whatever our parents taught us would help us raise this new baby that's in our life, right? And most people kind of go towards that when they have their first child. Just, what was I raised on? What did my parents teach me, or how was I raised? And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's toxic, it's bad, and we just don't know any better. And luckily, I had great parents. Even though they were young, they came from great families from 2 different islands of the West Indies. My mother was from Jamaica, and my father was from Trinidad. And they both had two totally different family styles, I'll say. My mother's side, large family, like extremely large. 10 siblings my mom had, and each of them had like five or so kids, most of them, anyways. And imagine now all of those kids, like, well, I'm one of those offspring that have 7 kids. So now we got hundreds of cousins just in Toronto alone. And we were removed culturally, not culturally because we lived in the Jamaican culture still, but we didn't go to Jamaica a lot like some families were able to and have a family home back there or whatever. So it was a little bit different for us. So we grew up Canadian, but the roots were always Jamaican on my mother's side. And the same thing for my father. And maybe some of them went back and forth, but I never had that opportunity or that experience to be able to go to Trinidad still yet ever in my life. And I plan to go soon. But, so it's a lot going on. And these parents didn't really know anything. My father came from like a toxic, probably abusive father. And they all left Trinidad to come to Canada for a better life. And then my mother is different. My grandfather, my grandmother on my mother's side were always together. Pops, God bless his soul. And Grandma, Miss B, God bless your soul. And Miss Rob. I was fortunate, even my great grandmother was there with them as well. And I grew up with her. So it was a totally different upbringing, even though it was a bit more hard in the sense of there wasn't a lot of, like money and stuff like that. We always had a roof over our head. We always had good food to eat. But all the other things, we couldn't really ask my mom for like, brand new shoes all the time, haircuts, this and that, vacations, none of that stuff came in. So I was a wild child growing up in Flemington Park, seeing what all the other elders and, the experience that I had from my own family, which was a lot of aunts and uncles that had kids early on my mother's side. On my father's side, it was more, they had more education and what would seem to be a better life, but not necessarily, because there wasn't as much happiness that there was on my mother's side, all the laughter, joy, so much family around. You're always growing up with somebody doing something, but there was still that family unity. You took pride in doing things very well. There's a lot of great athletes, a lot of great minds like engineers, technicians, different things like that were very highly valuable and highly successful. So I got the best of both worlds, let's say. You know what I'm saying? I had the street side where I seen a lot of different things, and wherever my mom had to live, I had to grow up in those areas. And I grew up in Flemington Park most of my life. I lived in Bay Mills. I lived in Jane and Finch, right at Driftwood, right in the heart. Most people won't even know because when I lived in Driftwood, I still woke up every day. I was in grade 7. And I remember I lived right like 396 Driftwood, right by the bridge that go across to the building, convenience store. And I remember I just do my little walks here and there. But maybe the days that I was out there when I was there wasn't, maybe it was just the off day. There wasn't a lot of people around. But I remember coming home some nights and, ambulances outside or whatever's going on. It was the 90s. It was a wild time in Toronto, But I woke up every morning and I took the bus in grade 7. I took the bus to Flemington Park to go to my middle school there, Valley Park. I was already rooted in the culture of Flemington Park, and I knew that I just felt there was something there for me that I couldn't leave, especially after seeing and witnessing the things that I seen on TV. I seen there in real life. I seen the B-boys on the cardboard boxes when I walked outside. I seen ball players going crazy, dunks and all kind of high, like great athletes, including my own family. And it felt like home already for me, so I wasn't planning to leave. And, we'll get into that story a lot later because it's Fleming Park that raised me. Um, yeah, but growing up as a kid, it seemed like the cool thing to do to have kids when you're young. And we didn't know any better. Maybe it made us feel like big, like more mature. Um, who knows? It was it was a lot of misleading that was happening for us through the culture of hip hop, even some reggae, and there is just a lot of things being fed to us that we could have done differently, but we didn't. We followed the path that was laid for us. Some people better than others, and we had to learn along the way how to do things, the way that fit our lives. But yeah, so as a young kid, I had my first child at 17, and I couldn't have been happier. It was my mini me, and you do all them things when you're young. You're buying all the new shoes that are in the baby sizes. I remember I would buy all the shoes that I couldn't get for myself. They might have been a little bit too expensive for me back then, but I'd buy the baby version and make sure my son Khalil had it. And luckily that we had great parents around us, like his grandmother, and I remember when he was born, because we're still in school basically. So my baby mother was in school, going back to high school. I remember my grandmother on my Jamaican side watching Khalil, like babysitting him. And then later on, my mom ended up watching some of my kids. But, we'll talk about all of that. The first topic that we're going to be getting into, because there's going to be different topics, and then we'll have like the subtopics that follow, and we'll kind of get deeper into more reasoning. And when I say fatherhood, this is the FatherHood Podcast. And again, I am Adrian JB Homer, entertainer, businessman, father. And this isn't only for fathers. This is for parents. And a lot of us go through different situations, mothers, fathers, and some of us know more than others, are more experienced. And this is not me knowing everything or trying to tell you what to do. This is me allowing you to witness and be a part of my experience of being a father. And if in any way that could help or assist you, so be it. And I'll be happy that if it could help you. I've gone through a lot of things in life, and I've had to find out the hard way and learn the hard way of how to deal with things, from, again, childhood, parenthood, to long-term relationship, to infidelity, and and then into these stages now with having a young son now, and now experiencing family court with multiple mothers. And to give you a quick insight, like, this could be a whole new love and hip hop. I got two of my kids' mothers, like two baby mothers, sharing one lawyer. So every time I go to court, it's like double whammy. And I could tell people this, and some people have no care. They're like, bro, the life that you lived, you deserve that shit. You deserve that. And then others will feel sympathy, and others are going through even worse situations. And I remember one of my friends saying that, he went through counseling because he had a divorce. And he said, what I learned during counseling is no matter how bad we think our situations are, there's always somebody with a worse situation. So it's almost like take gratitude and, be happy for the situation that you're in, because you're living through it and you can manage it. Even if it seems hard, you're managing it. You're alive, you're walking, you're breathing. And there's other people that have far worse situations that you wouldn't want to ever be a part of. So I say thank you for all this experience, helping me be a better father, be a better man. Because what it taught me, having to deal with the family courts now, is more diligence, more attention, and more care for my children, because I seen that they almost were taken or pulled away or trying to be isolated from me. So it made me value the time that I spent with my kids a lot more, and appreciate things that I maybe have wouldn't appreciated the same. So yeah, so this is for all parents. But if you could relate to this and it helps you in your life, continue to listen. It's the Fatherhood Podcast. I am Adrian JB Homer. This podcast will be broken down into a lot of different segments, diving deep into more than just parenting, but the foundation and the roots. For today's first episode, and thank you for everybody that's tuning in, and for anybody that wants to have any kind of opportunities for sponsorship, endorsements, things like that, lawyers, advocacy groups, paralegals, consultants, anybody that could help parents get through, navigate through, difficult situations and help find the light in the darkness for them and get them past, help them be with their kids more, if it's child support, a lot of different things in family court go on, and a lot of us are blindsided, don't know what to do, and have no clue. And some of us could afford lawyers that will just take care of everything, and a lot of us can't. So it's helpful in any way to learn anything we can, and let's walk through this together. So hopefully it helps other people avoid these situations and these problems in the future, and creates better parents from most of us that weren't raised by parents per se, or didn't have the best upbringing. Doesn't mean that we can't be better parents than we know we had. So this first episode is the first topic, all right? The influence of cultural roots on child rearing, Jamaica, Trinidad, and life in Canada. And I say Jamaica and Trinidad because that applies to my life. Like, we're talking about my life here, and we could apply to anywhere in the world, from Europe to Asia to Africa to the Middle East. We all come from different cultural ways of upbringing that aren't the same here in Canada, that we have to adapt to and adjust to raise our children differently and accordingly, if you want to say it like that. Because again, in Canada, there's different laws, all kinds of different things that are not the same as being in maybe our country of origin, wherever our parents are from, and how they were raised. So for this episode, we're going to be talking about roots and traditions, child rearing in Jamaica and Trinidadian families, and again, all other cultures around the world could apply that too. A discussion on traditional family values in the cultures of Jamaica and Trinidad, and wherever you're from. What are the main priorities in raising children? How are they passed down from generation to generation? And what role do the elders play in the family? So we could break that down first from the first line. A discussion on traditional family values in the cultures, we'll say, of the islands, and what are the main priorities in raising children. So the way that I was raised, again, it was, everybody has such different outcomes of this. And for me personally, I was raised by teenage parents. So I remember as a child one of the only things I think that my parents ever tried to actually instill in me, because other than that, I think I was probably handed to grandparents, and then I remember being around my grandparents most of my young childhood. But the main priorities in raising children would be school and, staying clean, um, having food, and taking care of them best you can. When you're coming from a low income family, it's a bit different than I'm sure some other families would say. They had their, everything was always given to them, or they had just different family values or different experiences. But my experience, I remember the first thing my parents tried to instill in me was sit there and eat your porridge. And I remember porridge was the most disgusting thing to me as a kid. I love it now, but as a kid, I hated it. I would gag. And I remember you can't move up, boy. You can't move from that table until you finish the porridge. And I was one of the only things that I remember as a kid. I remember they lived above a store because they were so young. It's probably like dirt cheap back in the day to live above one of those stores. It's like probably Girard or somewhere East York, downtown. And that's the only thing that I remember. Make sure you eat your porridge. Again, so it's kind of like that traditional, whatever they learn from their parents, however they were raised in Jamaica. In the West Indian culture, there's a lot of lashes, belts, twigs, whatever you do to make sure you listen. And those are the things that I think were passed down that we had to change for the generation that were born in Canada and ended up having kids after that first wave of immigrants came to Canada. Beats for everything. People are angry and pissed off all the time. Not in my family, but I always seen that in a lot of other families. You see how they depict some of the little memes or the little jokes and stuff where they talk about West Indians, especially Jamaicans. And I get it, but my grandmother was very stern. I'll say not strict because she was so loving, but she'll I remember my cousin Patrick. Enough people know him in Toronto's Detroit. He lived in Regent Park, and I remember he'd always come and visit. And every time he'd come visit, we hanging out, growing up together as kids, and he always get me in trouble. I remember that's the only time. I remember one time he lit a fire in the backyard or something, and my grandmother came and beat both of us. It's the only time she ever hit me, and it wasn't because of me either. So we all have different experiences, but I never really got beats like that, but I always hear about next people getting beats, and I always see like other friends and different things growing up and how they're raised. But I think those are some of the things that were passed down in the West Indian culture. Discipline or listen. It's like control. And I believe all those things are all probably passed down from the slave descent, because my great grandmother that lived with us was born in early 1900s. So for a fact, they're witnessing and seeing some of the slave stuff. And she wasn't even black. She was German and Irish. And she had my grandmother while she married a Cuban man. My grandmother married the Jamaican man, my grandfather Pops. So it was late that even black culture even came into my blood and from my family history. Other than my grandfather's side, I'm sure they had lots of African and different descent. But even when I speak to my father on the Trinidadian side, it's the same thing. Strict rules, listen, discipline, and make sure you do what you're told. And very stern people. They had a lot of Spanish and Asian blood in them as well. And all those cultures come with the same type of thing. Discipline, listen when you're told, and don't ask no questions, right? Stay out of grown people's business. Don't really voice your opinion. And not saying for me personally, but that's how a lot of them people, grew up. And I guess those things started to get passed down to generation, because I noticed when I first had my first couple kids, it was in me. I was still following the Jamaican or the West Indian way, the Trinidadian. You got to listen, da da da, and finding myself just maybe not being the best or most caring father that I could have been. Even though I love my kids to death, and we have lots of fun and all that, but it was very strict still. Not so much, I let my kids, but it was still, it felt like some of that was still in me from what I just seen other people do, not even necessarily what I thought was right or not, just what I seen them do. But, I shook that off later in life after having more kids and having more experiences. And as we're having more kids, the first kids are getting older, so they could voice their opinions more. And I always try to encourage my kids to speak up for themselves. Even if it's me, speak up for yourself, because you shouldn't take anything from anyone if you don't feel it's right. And I'm glad that they all felt comfortable to be able to do that, because it helps me learn to be a better father. By experience, by seeing others, by seeing how other people live their lives, and with admiration or hope, we try to make changes to adjust. Through school here in Canada, you see different things and meet different people, so you could kind of, communicate and see how other people have it at home and what they go through. And then you realize some of the people that had it the worst were Canadian-born, English-born people. And there's a lot of alcoholism in a lot of different families. But again, you start to find that grace and be happy that you're born with strict parents and different things, because it seems to seem better than a lot of the other options that are out there. But, those are some things that's passed down from generation to generation. Just a lot of toxic male masculinity that kind of spilled over into just the parenthood period. And a lot of mothers, same ways. It's just a lot of hardship. And dealing with hardship made people have to become harder, have thicker skin, and have to manage a lot more with a lot less. So it did cause stress. And these are the things that we know now that we hope, are changing in the world, that people could kind of live differently, raise their kids better. And, we just, again, this topic is about roots and traditions. Child rearing in Jamaica, Trinidad, and other cultural families from other ethnicities around the globe. I remember my grandmother, one thing that was instilled for like a tradition, not tradition, but roots. And then later on, I seen that it wasn't just it was just the whole family. So I remember my great grandmother, because my grandmother worked at a hotel, and she would come home every day. She would bring whatever she could bring back from the hotel, little buns, little packets of jam and peanut butter and different things. And it seems like nothing, but when you're a kid and there ain't a lot going on, like that's like candy from the store. And I remember my great grandmother always cooked the food, have it ready. She's soaking the peas, whatever beans, whatever type of things. Everything is made from scratch, raw. Rice is getting soaked. Everything is from scratch. I'm sure if they could have had chickens and cows outside in the backyard, they would have had that, so they could have had that fresh too. But it wasn't Jamaica. We're in Canada now. And we're in Toronto. So I remember, no matter what, there's again a lot of siblings on my mother's side. And I remember every day my great grandmother had at least 10 plates on that table covered up with food that she shared out for everybody. And anytime that somebody would come home, you say, you say, your plate's over there, or your plate's on the table. And if somebody came back home with friends, or there was some other guest that came, my my great grandmother would share out a little bit from every plate to make up a new plate for that person, to make sure that everybody could eat, even if people had to eat a little bit less. And that's a tradition or a root that was instilled in me. So with my kids, we call sharing is caring, right? So if we have something, we're all going to eat. It's as a parent as well, it could be really expensive going out and buying a lot of things for your kids. If you got a lot of kids, just buying the McDonald's combos is crazy sometimes. You spend $100 just on McDonald's. That's insane. So we don't even do them type of things, especially we make the kids make healthy choices. And if they want some junk once in a while, sure, but not on an everyday basis. But even if we do some food Greek or whatever, we gotten to the point where the kids don't even want the whole entire, they wouldn't want a Greek dinner where you have the whole kebab, all the rice, potatoes, and all that. So that's getting shared out from at least like 3 kids that could share that. And that's more than sufficient. They're going back, and then, by the time they're done, they don't want no more. And I remember that being instilled in me from my grandmother. And I could have easily felt bad not where I gotta go buy like 5, 6 Greek dinners. It's a lot, and for somebody to do that all the time, for it to be sustainable, it doesn't make sense. So for me, it made sense to share. And if we all could have a little, we all have. And if I can't give all, then we don't have it. Those are the things that were instilled with me for those roots, those traditions. Another tradition in my family is church. That's a big thing in the West Indian culture as well. Not so much on my Trinidadian side. I don't remember going to church with them ever. I don't think once. But on my mother's side, a couple of my aunts are pastors. They all have, churches. My aunt had a couple churches back in the day and was healing people and, helping a lot of people. And my aunt now is Pastor Yvonne Bullard over at Revival Time. They got an elementary school, studio, big cathedral church, full basketball gym, kitchen in the basement. It was a big church. So going to church was always a part of our life. As kids, going to Sunday school and growing up is just instilled in us. So sometimes we go, sometimes we don't. But it seems like now, as everyone's getting older, they like being in church a little bit more. Sometimes just being around fam and seeing my Auntie Yvonne on the podium doing her thing. It's like watching her perform every week. And maybe that's why I have a little bit of this performance bug inside of me where I've always wanted to be an entertainer without even knowing it. But church is another big thing that's in the West Indian culture as well. Other cultures, I'm sure, have a lot of different roots and traditions. And I've seen a lot. Growing up in Flemington Park, it was deemed as the most multicultural place on planet Earth. So I got to have the benefit of seeing all different cultures and go to all the different birthday parties and be in school with a lot of different people from all over the world. And everyone was very passionate about their culture still. Yeah, that's the thing about Canada that I like. Is I feel like in America they try to mask their identity or try to adapt to the American culture, but in Canada we are product of where we're from, and then everybody kind of melds together into this big cultural ocean here in Canada. Everyone's swimming together and coexisting and has room to be themselves without feeling any kind of any kind of scrutiny or feeling bad because they're feeling prideful of their country or their culture, wherever they're from. But yeah, growing up in Toronto was very, very unique. I loved it. I love it to this day. Still meeting different people from around the world. And another part of this roots and traditions was what roles what roles do elders play in the family? So with the West Indian culture and with a lot of other cultures actually, not all, but I notice a lot of them, the elders play the parental positions. So with me having a child, I knew that it would my son's grandmothers are helping raise him. With me as a child, I remember it was my grandparents raising me. I remember going to my aunt's house in Malton, Ontario. Not every summer, but I felt like it was a lot of summers. Every summer, all of a sudden, I get dropped off, and I'm just somewhere else for 2 months, and I don't see my parents. Maybe once every month or something, a couple of weeks or something. I don't remember. I just remember being where I was and growing up there with my auntie Pat in Malton, and with all my other cousins that lived there. And then I remember once maybe I might have been with my other aunt in Rexdale or something for a month, or in Scarborough, or this and that. So the elders help to, they used to, they say that it takes a village to raise a child. So the elders play that role, I think, in the West Indian culture and some of the other cultures as well, where the elders are there, and hopefully the younger generation is helping to take care of the elders so the elders could take it easy and help manage things like the kids, and to relieve things like daycare costs and all of that, having your kids somewhere else. Your kids are being raised at home with other cousins and different people, and that's how I kind of grew up. I never went to a daycare in my life, and my kids started going to daycares because I guess it just became more normalized as we got older. But I was always with family and my grandmothers. I remember being in Flemington Park and watching my grandmothers make roti and cakes and cook all the time, and then being in Scarborough and watching my other grandmothers do the same thing. No matter where I was, because my parents were so young, I was always with grandparents. My parents were out doing whatever they were doing, being young in their early 20s, doing whatever they were doing, having fun. Imagine that, right? So I was raised with my grandparents, and then later on, as I became a teenager, and I was able to kind of navigate myself and become a little bit more independent, it was Flemington Park that raised me. And we'll get into that in the other episode, in the next episode. But this is episode 1. This is the Fatherhood Podcast. I am Adrian JB Homer, and we got a lot to dive into. I hope that everybody out there is doing the best that they can with whatever that they have available to them. I'll say a few things, and we'll continue to pick up on these things, and anytime I speak, just to reiterate and to help make sure we remind people, if you need help, you don't know what to do, you get served, somebody saying they want child support, they want to, give you custody issues with your child. And there's many reasons why people do this. Sometimes vindictive, sometimes it's really necessary. And we all got to kind of be accountable for our actions and our past and what we're doing, right? So for me, what can we do? We're already in these situations. I had to learn the hard way. I had to lose a lot. I had to spend a lot. It's been very hard for me dealing with my situations. I still have 2 kids that I haven't seen in the last, it feels like over 5 years. And they're elder, so they're riding with their mom because their mom is the one that's putting me through some of the issues. And like any of us, we're gonna side with our mom, wrong and strong, whatever it may be. And unfortunately, because of that, we've lost the connection, and they've lost the connection with their entire family. And we're all pray that they come back, and a light is shine upon us all that helps brighten all of this and gets us out of this dark cloud. But when I was first served, I had no idea what to do. I thought I was being attacked. I thought it was vindictive, malicious. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to avoid it, just forget about it. Don't even think about it. Who cares? I ain't going to go. I ain't going to respond. I ain't going to do none of that. And what I'll say is I had to learn the hard way that you do have to respond. You should. It's in your best interest to. And sometimes it may be in your favor. And we don't know this until we go through it. But the one thing that we can't do is avoid it and just let it solve itself, because it won't do that. And it won't be in your favor. They'll do whatever they want, and they'll make decisions on your behalf without your say. And that's one thing we don't want for anybody, any parent out there. So what I will say is take the time, and even if you don't know what to do, it could be a very highly emotional situation. Take the time to breathe. Think about what you need to do. And most importantly, think about how special and how much you love your children and how much you would do for them no matter what. So sometimes when people attack us, and it makes us feel like we have to do things based on them telling us or attacking us, we're in defense mode, and we think that we have to defend ourselves or take the same actions back on that person. In reality, we just need to take a step back, breathe, assess the situation, and then move forward accordingly. And the best way to move forward in the court of law here in Ontario is find yourself a good lawyer. It's very hard, especially when you think that none of them care. They just want your money. Nobody wins in all of these issues. Nobody wins in family court except for the lawyers. The judges don't care one way or another. Most of them don't have kids. And the lawyers, some of them have kids, but most of them don't, and they don't care either. They're just here for your money. They would have represented me. They would have represented the opposition. It doesn't matter who they represent as long as they get paid. Having a good lawyer on your side will allow them to do their job, which is to win. So at least we know that it's an even playing field when it comes to lawyers. There's no loyalty there. Loyalty is in the pay. So if you have the ability to pay for a lawyer once you're served, or if you're, having your children being kept from you, isolated from you, and you found yourself in a situation where you love your kids, you want to see them, you need them in your life, but what can you do, right? You can't go argue with this person. They could call the cops on you, and then all of a sudden you're in legal problems for another reason. But you could be proactive, and you could also try to get your children in your life by going through the courts, because that is your Canadian right. And you could find a lawyer to help you through that situation so that you're not taken advantage of. There is still some systemic racism here in Canada, and it's all on a favorable, I don't even know how to explain it. I was in the court once, and the judge looked at some light-skinned guy, probably thought he was cute, and tried to do everything under the sun to help him in the situation. And then another person, she acted like she was annoyed and just wanted that person out of her face. The first day I went to court, when I was called, because my children's mother, after all that I gave them, still, I guess, with her new husband and new voices in her ears telling her that she needs to take me to court for child support and for custody visitation, which I'm around my kids all the time. But yeah, that was a situation where I didn't know it was going to happen. And for whatever reason, it happened. But I had to deal with it and I had to learn quickly what to do. And I didn't. And I lost a lot because of emotion and because of lack of knowledge of what to do and ego. I haven't been in court ever in my life, really, like as a juvenile. A couple situations, maybe get into an argument or something, and somebody, calls the cops, and he's got to do some silly stuff. But I've never been through trials and courts and all of this stuff and penalized and all of that. So it was very new to me, and it felt backwards. Like this is what I'm dealing with. All of this, having to get lawyers and all of this for. And I didn't know what to do, but I had to figure it out. So I'm a big advocate now on making sure that people get the right representation, get the right lawyers, and make sure that everything is done. Cross your T's, dot your I's. There is help at the courts where you could ask for some of the clerks to help you fill out the documents properly, or what documents to properly fill out. There is legal aid for people that can't afford lawyers. And for legal aid, what I'll say is just make sure, you tell them that you make less than, I think, like $15,000, $18,000 a year or something like that. And just, have a bank account that doesn't have lots of money going through it. And make sure that if that's what it is, you need that. A lot of guys on the street that don't really have a job, never really had a job in their life, it's just all cash through their hands. You might find yourself in a bind, all of a sudden you're low, and now you need legal representation. You don't know what to do. And it's not the best, but at least it's somebody that could help speak on your behalf. Because what I found is sometimes the courts, the judges, the other lawyers, when I tried to represent myself, they just kind of walked all over me because I didn't know the law and all of the lingo. Almost, were sarcastic and condescending with me. It was a very bad experience. I'm still going through it to this day. And like I said, I've had a couple adult kids now that have been isolated since they're in their teenage years. And for whatever reason, they are staying true to that. I love them, and I hope that they're well. I have 5 other kids that are still active in my life every day. And we all miss and love them like they're here with us every day. And that's one thing I say is never give up and always do what you can to see your kids. Even if you're far away, I try to call my kids every day if I can, as long as their mothers allow it, which most of them do. It's just a couple now. I got to deal with other, call times and different things like that. And there's things that you could do if there's toxic relationships that you're in, or, having very severe problems. You could get parenting apps where you could download a parenting app, and then you can make the calls and everything is recorded. Phone calls, video calls, all the messaging is there. So you could always pull the transcript. If there's any discrepancy or if there's anybody trying to say something, then all that record is there. And then it kind of helps you stay in line as well. And, just kind of doing for your kids better, having more patience, and showing them that you love them. Regardless of any situation, the kids know. The kids are very smart. And as long as they see you putting in the effort and they know that you're trying and you love them, that sometimes is enough for now. And at least they have that and not being abandoned. I didn't grow up with my father. He was just gone. I've seen, now we're trying to reconcile our relationship now. But it's interesting that there's been a great void. I remember me and my brother going to some family functions, and we see all the pictures of his life with his other family that doesn't include us. It's almost like we're not existing. And ironically enough, me and my brother have the most kids in the entire family combined. We probably have more kids than everybody in the family, each of us, just our own kids combined for everybody else. So, regardless of all of that, we still gave my father and my mother, we gave them 13 grandkids. Just me and my one brother. And my other brother's now having kids, and the family's growing. But it's never too late. And we'll get into a lot of different things. And I know we're kind of going ping pong in here and there, just kind of feeling it out. We'll get more structured, and we'll have some people, maybe join me once in a while, helping to give you other views of what the things that we're talking about, just from other perspectives. Because again, my perspective is from my life and what I've lived and experienced. But yeah, I hope you stay tuned, and we're going to be getting to the next episodes. Look out for episode 2. And yeah, again, I am Adrian JB Homer, and this is the Fatherhood Podcast. And reach out, tap in, put your comments, any other topics that you'd like to hear me speak about, anything any thoughts, any suggestions, any comments on just what you've heard today. Maybe you have a past experience that you want to kind of tap in and let people know about your experience. Feel free. Please subscribe. We're trying to get up to over 1,000 subscribers. We close, and we're trying to get up to 10,000 even faster than that. So again, this is JB's World on YouTube, at JB's Music on Instagram and TikTok, and Facebook, Adrian Homer. And yeah, tune in for the next episode 2. And again, I am Adrian JB Homer, and this is the Fatherhood Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, we did the first one. Let's see how this go. Bless up, everybody, and good luck with all of your parenting. You're doing great. Keep up the good work. Bless up.